Well, to talk a bit more about the situation in Sudan with me now, let's bring in Sudan specialist Jean-Baptiste Galopin. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us. What are your thoughts here? How much of a game changer will this be now, the fact that the largest opposition bloc in Sudan is now joining the others to call for the president to step down?
What we've just seen is really the withdrawal of a number of parties which were previously not in the opposition, but actually part of the ruling coalition, and they've pulled out of the coalition. And I think it's very significant because it tells us a lot about the calculations that these people are making. These people who were supporting the government for two weeks of protests have actually decided that the situation has reached a point where Bashir's days are numbered, and they're betting that Bashir will go. So it's very significant politically, even though these parties are not very representative, actually. And a lot of people in the opposition are very skeptical with regards to this flip-flopping by these government parties. But nevertheless, it is going to have a significant effect, I believe, because it shows protesters that street mobilization works. It has concrete political consequences.
And yet this is not the first time there have been street protests like this. Each time, though, Bashir has survived. Will he survive again this time?
This is really open to question. Obviously, it will depend on mobilization dynamics, but also what's happening within the regime at the moment. The latest wave of protests took place in 2013, and at that time, a lot of the mobilization mostly came from marginalized groups, from Darfuris, from youth groups, and this time it's very different. You see constituencies that are previously supporting the regime are really actually at the heart of the regime. For example, in the town of Adbara, which is a recruiting ground for the security services, you see these constituencies mobilizing against the government, and I think that's very significant. Now, the regime is calibrating its response very carefully, in contrast to 2013, where 200 people were killed within a few days. This time, we see actually that the officers on the ground have wide discretion over the use of force. And despite the number of people who were killed, we are nowhere near the death toll that we had in 2013. And I think this is very revealing because it tells us that Bashir is worried that using mass violence could backlash, either by mobilizing more protesters or by causing splits and mutinies within the security forces and the security services.
What about the use of social media in organizing these protests? The government in Sudan obviously tightly controls the mainstream media, so the internet is key. But internet users are now saying Sudanese authorities are blocking access to popular social media platforms.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they've been blocking access for a while, and there are workarounds with proxies and so on. But I think obviously social media is very significant in this, in spreading the news. A lot of the people on social media, a lot of the Sudanese on social media are actually based abroad. But we see also that there is a lot of mobilization that is very grassroots, that really happens at the local level within communities across the country. And the problem that the opposition is facing right now is that this opposition is largely uncoordinated. And the regime has the ability to shift security forces around and successfully repress. And I think the challenge for the opposition will be to arrange so that people would actually go on the street at the same time to really stretch the security forces thin. So I expect this to happen these efforts to happen in next week.
Jean-Baptiste, thank you so much for speaking to us. Jean-Baptiste Galopin there, a Sudan specialist speaking to us from Berlin. Thanks.